Hope you guys all had a good week. Mine has been extraordinarily weird. I am sorry that I'm not up to date with all the grading. I have had really bad cell reception. Not cell, I'm sorry, internet connections. And I found out, I didn't know that there was a limit of how much stuff I could put on YouTube each day until the day before yesterday. So I'm still putting what you guys are turning in up on there. The final, I kind of tried to explain it a little bit. The final is not a test. It's going to be more of a discussion. So I hope that alleviates some of your concerns because the only way you can really do badly on the final is uh, to not show up.
That's great news.
Yeah, especially since we're all the ones hearing it.
Well, I'm. How are you guys doing with your uh, attendance and everything?
As far as I know, I have perfect attendance. Because I send the code words when I miss them.
Oh, yep, you did that. Excellent. And you and Nicole both did a great job on that, and Allie as well.
I've done them all. I just gotta send the code words.
All right, yeah. If you can do that before tomorrow night, that'd be great.
For sure.
Um, I I found out earlier today after this morning's final, and I emailed everybody that you will not have access to turn in or submit any assignments after midnight tomorrow night. But in order to get the grades and stuff, and I told you that you would have until Sunday at midnight, just email the assignments to me directly, and I sent the email. And I will always have access to Canvas. So what I will do is if I can't put the lesson directly in, I usually will put a note received via email, and then I'll put the grade in so you have the grade. I think I let you know that there. Didn't I tell you about the guy who, like a week before the last day of class, had a D plus? He had done the stuff, but his parents were sick, and so he hadn't been able to turn things in. Did I tell you about that?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he, in the next several days, he just turned everything he'd finished in, and it ended up getting an A minus. So I mean, total score. So I know that's probably not standard practice for a lot of teachers, but I know what it's like to be a professional and an artist, and you don't always. Life isn't always as respectful of our intentions as we'd hope. I think John Lennon said, "Life is what happens after you make plans," and that is totally true. So I'm gonna start asking who is here. It looks like right now I can still see everybody's name. So I see Nicole.
Yes.
All right, and Hanley,
Yes.
Michael.
Yeah.
I don't see. Okay, Cassie.
Yes.
Excuse me. Excuse me. All right, and
Bless
Alex.
you.
Thank you. I have these 24-hour algae pills, but they seem to work for about 22 hours. Then you got to take another one. I feel so betrayed because I paid for 24 hours. I want 24 hours. Okay, now what we are doing today, I'm going to hear from everybody. What I want everybody to tell me are your biggest challenge and your biggest success, and then we'll go around and you'll tell me your favorite part of the whole process and your most hated part of the whole process. And you can do hate first and favorite later. And then the last thing is we're going to go around and everybody will get a chance to talk about themselves a little bit and how they plan on applying the things that they've learned. The first time you talk, please tell us, give us your first name and tell us what kind of work you do. In the morning session, we had several people that are professional photographers and graphic designers. And I think it's always interesting to find out your unique perspective. You know, where are you in your professional arc, and what kinds of things your brain is trained to deal with, because then I get a sense for how difficult this class can really be. And you know, I say things like that, and I'm not joking. When you have 10 years of experience drawing and working with 2D, when you start growing new neurons working with 3D and designing in a 3D environment, it does cause headaches in several people. And so, you know, that's not just anecdotal observation. There are actually studies that show that sometimes when people learn new things, they will get headaches. It might be psychosomatic, but whether or not it is, there's still an actual physiological change that happens, and it can be really uncomfortable. So, you know, part of me feels sorry for you. The rest of me is thinking, well, I'm glad you were able to stick with it and barrel through anyway. All right, so who first wants to talk about their biggest challenge in this class and their biggest success? And when you do talk, please let us know a little bit about yourself and what you normally do when you're not donning your costume and doing your vigilante work. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
All right.
So I'm Hanley. I've done 2D my whole life. I do acrylic painting, but I'm getting into graphic design, so I'm still very new, but I love it so far. My biggest struggle in this class was pretty much what you just described as a whole. I had never done 3D before, and it's a whole new way of thinking. So it was most difficult for me to put you know, my artistic skills in a whole different setting. And I feel like by the last sculpture, I could think of something, envision it, and, you know, put the meaning I wanted to in it. And then I'd say my biggest success, I really liked the texture cubes, and I thought I did a good job on mine. So I'd say that was my biggest accomplishment.
All right, excellent. Very good. Thank you. I used to go through and have like half the people talk about their challenges and half the people talk about their successes, and half the people that made them feel kind of sad and the other half felt happy. And I think if you talk about your challenge first and then your success after, that leaves us on a high note. So thank you very much. So Hanley, you're saying by the last sculpture, you were actually a lot more confident than your first one.
Yeah, exactly. Like the first one, I struggled with probably the most, the sculpture-based photography, just because photography is not at all what I dabble in, I guess. So it was hard to put my mind into, you know, conceptualizing those photos.
All right. And I'm glad that you were able to resolve a lot of that and were more confident by the time you got to the last sculpture. That's excellent to hear. All right, who would like to go next? Biggest challenge and biggest success.
I can go.
All right.
This is Cassie Nelson.
All right.
Well, I can tell you the assignments that we chose. I had the biggest struggle with, let's just say, with the foam, styrofoam one that we had to do with the carving, because it was really hard to cut and shape it. And there's times I nicked myself more than the foam. And then,
Oh
yeah. Yeah, and then of course I don't have very strong wrists on my right wrist, so that was a very challenge. And then too, I live in the desert, so the option of sitting outside doing it was a no go. I don't want to sit out in 120-degree weather. Sorry, no, thank you. So I had the foam all over my apartment, but
Awesome.
yeah, I had a hard time too trying to get the trying to get it all finished and touched up. But the one that I really enjoyed doing was my final project, the wrapping one. Um, I wanted to choose a piece that suited my personality as well as what I love. And Halloween is my favorite holiday. And I kept thinking, okay, what could I do? What could I do? And I went into the dollar store and they have these metal frames shape of like a pumpkin. And then I incorporated my craft skills and my design skills into this piece and still incorporated the wrapping. And I'm quite tickled how it turned out. Um, yes, it took me about 10 hours to do it, but after looking at the finished product, you know, I can look at it and say, I can't believe I just did that. So,
That's
yeah.
awesome. No, that is really great. So what kind of things do you normally do um, as an artist?
Art is my field, it's my baby. So, you could say from drawing to painting's not my strongest, but I'm working on that. But I do crafts, photography, any Adobe software programming I can do. I just love to do anything with my hands and creating something.
So was shifting to 3D, was that a challenge for you?
No, because it was able to branch my knowledge and experience experimenting different ways how art is viewed.
Okay.
It was just different because some of the things that I thought didn't look like art to me, to be honest, was art. Um, but it was really fascinating to hear the artist's biography, their stories behind why they created the piece. And so it kind of gave me a more found respect for these artists. And I'm looking at it a different perspective when I walk by a piece of art, like the one where it has a bunch of trash wrapped up in a garbage bag with string and so forth, that I'm gonna look at it as a different perspective where there's a story behind it. There's a reason why this is wrapped this way or designed this way.
All right, I think that's a really good observation. Excellent. Very good. Who would like to go next?
I can go.
All right.
So
Okay,
one of
tell us a
my
little bit about what you normally do, then your
what I do.
biggest challenge and your hugest success.
Okay. So I work with like Canva in my job. So it's like pretty much just using graphics and things like that. And then I really like photography, and also arts and crafts. So I really like all anything art. I'm not very good at like creating sculptures. So my challenge was also the styrofoam. I think for me, like I had no idea how to do paper mache. That was like my first time ever doing that. And I think it didn't turn out as smooth as I wanted it to. So that was kind of like a struggle. But anyways, and then the one that I really liked was the texture tiles. I really enjoyed making those because it was like more of a way more of a craft that I knew how to make. Like it was easier for me and I enjoyed making that one.
All right, excellent. That sounds good. Was it a struggle for you going from what you're used to dealing with 3D design like this?
Kind of like yes and no. I think some projects were kind of hard for me, like for example, the styrofoam and like what was it? The wire sculpture. But the rest I felt more comfortable to
Okay.
do. I don't know. It's like half.
No, I think that's fair because there are sometimes, I don't know, the only issue with going into a new medium that makes us uncomfortable is that it's difficult to find a frame of reference or go into it feeling that we can confidently address it. And if we don't have that frame of reference where we can feel like we're on pretty decently solid footing, it can be very difficult. And so it's interesting to me that there are some projects that people feel like that about and very uncomfortable with, while there are others that they feel very confident with. When the reality is, nobody has any experience doing any of them. You know, so your confidence level should be the same on all of them. And so I think that's just fascinating to hear that. I wanted to tell you about the styrofoam thing. Yeah, it's messy and everything, but originally when we first did this class online last year, we were having people carve wood. What kind of a pain in the neck would that be, do you think? Would you guys all prefer doing wood
That
over
would have been
styrofoam?
hard.
Yeah, I think the suck factor would have been. What was that?
I probably would have dropped out of the class if you were going to do that to us.
Me
I'm
too.
I'm glad I didn't. Yeah, styrofoam is messy and everything, but I used to work with Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, and I know the damage that a 2-inch blade pocket knife can do to somebody when they're not paying attention, and I did not want that for you guys. Who would like to go next?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think it's just me.
Me too.
But
After.
oh, my bad. Then yeah, I'll go next. I kind of have a bad internet connection, so I might be a little choppy here and there.
Tell us a
But
little bit about what you do in your regular life, and then biggest challenge and biggest success.
so when it comes to art, I usually do a lot of illustrations. I like ever since I was a kid, I've been doing a lot of pen and paper and pencil and paper. And then I switched over to digital art a couple years back, and I really enjoy digital painting and stuff in Photoshop. It's a lot of fun. Um, and I think my greatest, or the hardest part about this was, I think, yeah, the biomorphic structure for me was a real challenge because when I like looking, I like you always go on um, those not vacations, those field trips in like school, and then you go see these biomorphic structures in the museums, and I was always like, oh my gosh, like I don't know how people make those. Like it's just insane. Like it's so simple, yet like to make something like that is really complex. It takes a lot of thought to make it look good. And I was just like a lot of people think that you can just, slap a couple cuts on it and then boom, you got yourself a biomorphic structure. But, it's a little more than that. That and I really hate styrofoam. Like, styrofoam, the squeaky sound that it makes is just it's like nails on a chalkboard for me. I can't do it.
I hate the sound.
Yeah, but I did it. And it was just really difficult to figure out how to do it, how to go about it, and but I think for me that was my greatest success because I came out like really liking it, and for a number of reasons. Um, so how I did mine was after I paper mached it, I didn't really like the shape too much, but I was like, oh my gosh, like I think I can really save this with the colors and stuff I use. So how I ended up finishing it was I sprayed it with some primer, white primer paint, and it was a spray can. And then after I let it dry, I have a friend that likes to do this knockoff hydro dipping stuff, which is uh, you spray the like a bucket of water, the top of it, or the water with different spray cans, and it creates kind of like this floating paint on the surface, and then you just dip the thing there. So I did that a couple of times, like 5 or 6 times, and then it ended up looking like this volcanic rock type of thing, and I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. So I was like, it was a really big surprise to me. Um, but it was I think that was the greatest success because just kind of like one of those perseverance things, you just keep going, no matter like sometimes you don't like it, and I think that goes for a lot of artists. I mean, I can't really remember one thing that I really liked along the way, but it always turns out okay. But yeah, I think that one was my biggest success coming out of it.
I really like that perspective where it was the thing that was the most unpleasant and you stuck with it and ended up being your biggest success. That's really cool. I
Thank you.
appreciate that shift of perspective is really excellent to see. All right, Allie, how about you? What do you normally do?
Um, so I kind of do a lot of everything. I feel like my mom and my grandpa, like growing up, was a watercolor artist, and my mom's very crafty, and so I kind of just grew up in a artistic home. So I've done a lot of watercolor, but I'm also a photographer and videographer. But on top of that, I'm studying graphic design. So I've been doing a lot with digital media lately. Um, and I kind of just love to paint too. I mean, because I'm doing graphic design, I've been doing a lot of art classes. So I also love to draw and do a lot with like acrylics and oil paints as well. So kind of just a mixture of everything. Um, but I feel like I knew that this class was definitely going to be centered around 3D art, and so I almost feel like my perspective was just open minded from the beginning. And since I've done a little bit with 3D art in the past, I don't feel like it felt really like a 180. And I think part of that is probably because in my last design class, um, we had to learn things about art that I just had never thought about before and focus on like different details and shapes and colors and lines and how everything is down to, like a shade or a texture, just like the basics. And I had never really thought about it like that before. And so I think this class has helped me learn that side of things from the 3D perspective. And so for me, the most challenging, I feel like I also kind of struggled with the biomorphic abstraction because I really put it off to like the last minute, because I have roommates and didn't really want it to get all over my apartment, so I did it outside, but um, also didn't want to be sweating a lot. So I did it when it cooled down a little bit more. But honestly, like once I started doing it, I feel like I got the hang of it. Paper mache was kind of a struggle because I don't think I really knew how to make the mache mixture, but that's also okay. But I think the one that was maybe the most difficult for me was the texture tile one, or maybe like mentally the most difficult because even though like I don't hate cardboard, I hate the idea of it being considered art. Because it's like I've moved so many times in my life and everything is always packed with cardboard boxes, and to me it's just like a not artsy. So I was like, it was really interesting to do the research section for that module, I think, because it helped me kind of try to, but still, even when I think about it, I'm like, wow, I have two cubes that are cardboard boxes sitting in my room. Like, anyway, but so that one was kind of difficult for me to kind of wrap my head around. Even though it was fun, and I feel like I did okay on figuring it out. But, and then as far as like my favorite one, I think
I don't remember if it was Nicole or Cassie. Cassie, I think. I also liked doing the wrapped one because I really wanted to focus on something that I loved. And so it actually took me probably the most time out of, well, other than the paper mache one, but it took me a really long time to figure out because I didn't want to just like wrap a bunch of random things in my apartment. I wanted to create something that was like made out of things that I loved or like somehow showed something that I loved. And so I ended up wrapping this. It's actually a metal branch. It's not a real branch, but I wrapped a metal branch that I've kind of just always loved, and it doesn't go with any of my decor, but it's just like there. So I was like, perfect. This is a great opportunity. And I wrapped it with ribbon, and I wrapped it with the string that we were given. And it took me forever to wrap it with the string, and I put a mask on it. I wrapped it with a mask too for a portion of it. And I just kind of wanted to tie in like how hard it's been as a creator for I feel like most of us during COVID, by doing something that was like a little bit smoother and more simple with the ribbon, but then also the really tight coils with the rope, and how we still have to pay attention to that detail and still deal with the social restrictions. And like especially this class, I don't know if it's hard for everybody else, but I really wish that I could have had art in person this past year. So that was my favorite project this year.
All right, excellent, very good. Now, the second set of questions has an awful lot to do with this, but I want you to open it up and think about, all the things that you did during the term. What was the thing that you hated the most about the class and everything that we did, and what was the thing that you loved the most out of the class and everything we did? And it's I've gotten some really interesting feedback on this from several people. So this is very similar to what you just talked about, but a little bit different. We're angling it just a little bit different, focusing it just a little bit differently. Who would like to go first? Most hated. Most,
I can
yes?
go first if no one else wants to. This is Cassie. So the most hated I think was doing the whole research papers. I don't like writing, and I have ADHD, so my writing is like jumbled. You could say kind of like squirrel when you see up. My mind's all over the place. So that was a struggle there, and then that's basically it. And just trying to get the voice recording and with the material and all that to work, and us having problems with that. But I like the fact that we were doing all these different projects because, like many of you guys, we like to branch our knowledge in the art field and expand. And it was just an enjoyable experience to be able to have different materials for different projects, from the cardboard um, to the wiring, which I love doing that. I made palm trees with a crab, and just seeing the recycled material that we're using, that we could create all these pieces. I enjoyed it.
All right, very cool. I like hearing that. I like hearing what your most hated thing was, as well as your favorite thing. I think that's kind of an interesting juxtaposition, and it's going to be different for every person. As you were talking as well, I just remember how miserable it must be. I grew up in a desert as well, and that's got to be miserable when you just, especially with COVID and everything, you get stir crazy, but there's no place to go. And a friend of mine is from Kuwait. He bought a timeshare in St. George. He and his family get it every August because he said that even at 117 degrees in the shade, it's still less miserable than it is in Kuwait. I just think, man, that sucks. But I love your
Yeah,
perspective.
it's
Thank you.
gross here.
What's that?
The heat is gross here. Don't come down here.
All right, who'd like to go next? Hated and favorite.
I can go.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Annalie.
No worries. So, this is Hanley. The thing I hated most was probably the wire sculpture. Because I envisioned so many different like cool designs, and for some reason I just couldn't get the wire to look the way I wanted it to. So my end result was okay, but I didn't love it. Like it was hard to feel like I was trying to be passionate about that project, but it was hard to, and my hands couldn't make what I wanted them to.
Right.
And then my most favorite was probably the texture cubes. I love working with different color schemes, and it was fun to make the texture cube. And then along with that, the research actually. I loved making the PowerPoint and diving into that particular artist and like what they're all about. It was super fun for me.
All right, excellent, very good. I like hearing that too because one of the reasons I got into art was so I didn't have to write. But then I found out that learning writing, really helped with the art as well, and back and forth. Because you do when you start making proposals for art shows and stuff, the research skills and the writing skills really help to explain what you want to do. Um, I I've been working on an exhibit idea, proposing it for next year, and I wrote a treatment for it and everything, and then I went to West Valley City Arts and sat down with the head curator there, and he read the thing and said, "Okay, we'll pencil you in." I mean, that fast. I was there talking to him for less than 10 minutes, and he read it, and he had no idea that I'd spent like 6 months getting this thing, getting all the ideas set down, writing it out, doing like 30 different drafts, and but when he got to it and read it, it was good enough that he penciled me in for an exhibit, and that's the power of writing. So I'm glad that somebody actually likes it because it's a tool that we have to use. When people ask you what your bio is, when people ask you for your artist statement, um, writing really comes in handy. I'm the reason I'm babbling on about that is that you're the first person that said this, and I'm just super excited.
Oh, good.
Isn't that sad? Isn't that sad? All right, who's next?
I can go.
All right, your most hated and your most favorite.
Okay. I wouldn't say I necessarily hated anything. I felt like what I hated the most was my time management skills, but I think that what I wish would have been a little bit different, or maybe, well, two things that I think would have been cool. One is like with the artist reviews, if instead of just writing every single one, if we could somehow like switch it up, if there was like an option to, it would have been fun to make a video or do something like that, similar to like the PowerPoint that we did. I don't know how other people feel about that, but I think it's fun, like Kennedy, like to do PowerPoint. I'm okay with writing, but it would have been cool if it got switched up a little bit. Um, what was I gonna say? Oh, the thing that was the hardest for me is splitting up the end project things. Because like for me, when I'm used to um when I'm doing like a paper or like a formal presentation, I'm used to like doing a lot of research and like writing up a draft and then like basically having like the final presentation done and then doing a bibliography afterwards. And it was kind of hard for me to like pick sources and do my bibliography before. And I guess I could have just like done the presentation and then turned in the bibliography, but I did the bibliography first and then I did my presentation and I was like, okay, I have like two other sources that like I want to add. And so I ended up just not using them in my final presentation. And so that was kind of hard for me because I felt like it was like kind of out of order. But I feel like it also did help me to write. So I don't know. But anyway, so that was kind of hard for me. And what I liked the most was I really liked the discussion boards and like being able to see everybody else's work and comment and use the like learn how to use the tools of artistic critique, because I feel like it's really valuable to see other people's perspectives, and I think it's fun to be able to give feedback to other people and like hype them up and make them feel like what they did was really cool, because that's something that is really hard with COVID, I think, and having or online classes is we don't really get that interaction with our peers as much. So I really loved the discussion boards, and the fact that we had live class was really nice.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear all of that. Excellent. All right, who would like to go next? Nicole
I
or
can
Mike?
go.
Okay, Nicole.
Okay. Let's see. So what I hated
Most
the
hated,
most,
most favorite.
hated and favorite. Okay. So what I hated the most, it's funny because a lot of people like the PowerPoint, but I really hated it. The reason why is because I couldn't figure out how to record, and I'm really bad at like figuring out computer stuff. I should be better, but I just couldn't figure it out, and it took me, I don't know, like way too long. Like I stayed up till 2 a.m. trying to figure it out, and I just was like, I'm done with this PowerPoint. Anyways, but that was one of my things that I didn't like. Another thing I didn't like, or maybe I just I was misinformed, or I didn't hear this part. But one thing that was hard for me was I was trying to listen to the lives while I was at work, but I couldn't like comment or like participate because I'm at work. So that was kind of hard for me. And sometimes, and I thought that we had to like show up there like every single time. So that was hard for me. And I felt bad because I wanted to respond, but I had to like leave my desk and walk to a designated area. But anyways, so that was hard. And then my favorite part of the class, I think, was the artist, like looking up the artist and like figuring out what they do, because I don't know why, but I got really inspired by them. I appreciated all that they did, and I really liked how we could like pretty much apply it to what we were learning at that moment, and like trying to figure out how to make the art be a certain way. And I don't know, I that was my favorite part. And I think now, like even now, I want to like search more artists and like learn more about them and why they do things, and and understand their story. And I think that's something that I really enjoyed.
All right, very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Michael. What thing did you hate the
Um,
most, and what thing did you like the most?
So I think the thing that I didn't like the most was probably at the beginning when we had to research or just watch those videos of those artists in the first two modules. Um, Mostly just because it's kind of depressing to watch them like for different reasons. I can't remember what his name was, but when he's just like describing the art he does like on the rivers, and like he's like putting icicles together and then sticks together and then they fall
Yeah,
apart
Andy
after
Goldsworthy.
like 7 hours of work. Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, this is, like it's cool, but it's so sad. Like it seemed more depressing, and then like especially the wire works. Like some people, it seemed a little scary to me. But it
Well,
was.
don't
So
watch any
I think my
videos
end
for
was really
Tibetan monks doing their sand paintings, because you will be so
bad. Oh
depressed.
God, no! I could. I don't think I could do it. It was just really depressing. So like, it kind of started off a little bit weird for me. Um, But what I think I liked the most was uh, I think I also really liked what they have for inspiration, what drives them and how they kind of ended up where they are. And, you know, it's really interesting to see how people, their life events, like, to really um, changed how they do art. And it was really interesting and really cool. So I think that was probably my favorite part. I was just seeing people and how involved you are now. It's really cool.
All right, excellent, very good. I really like those observations, and it's always fascinating to me where sometimes the same thing can be both the worst and the best at the same time. All right, now the last thing,
Yeah, 100%.
what's that?
I agree.
Well, the last thing is I would like everybody just to mention a little bit, just recap what you do, and then tell us what was one thing that you got out of this class that you are going that's going to inform all the work you do in the future. What is, or how are you going to apply what the things that you learned, the skill set, the skills or the thoughts you learned in this class for all your future work? Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. This is Hannah Lee.
Okay.
So again, my name's Hannah Lee. I do acrylic paintings and I'm getting into graphic design. Um, and something that we're supposed to say something that we think we'll stick with, right, from the class.
Yeah. What did you learn in class that is going to apply to your future work?
All right. I think that just overall, I have a new outlook on art. I feel like that came from researching all those different artists. And when I would first pull up their work, I would be like, what the heck is this? But then I would learn to enjoy it and not, if not enjoy it, I would appreciate it and what they do. So I feel like I just have an overall new outlook on art and I am loving it. And then a more specific thing was the tools of artistic critique. I know I'll for sure use in future discussion boards when we critique peers through classes. And just new ways of using like the elements of design and color and texture in my work, I think are for sure will stick with me.
Right. That's excellent. And it's really good to hear too that there are definitely solid specific things that you can take forward. So that's excellent. All right, who'd like to go next? Remind us a little bit about what you do, and then what are you going to take forward for your future life from this class?
I can go.
All right.
So again, I kind of dabble in everything, mainly photography, and now I'm moving on to graphic design, but I do a lot of watercolor. And I think what I'm going to take mostly from this class is the basics of 3D art and how I can apply them to my 2D art. So, focusing really on texture, visual texture, and how I can make that more appealing in my work, as well as like lighting. I feel like is something that I learned a lot in this class, like how to use lighting to your advantage, um, and even just like the principle of like trying new things and new forms of art, because there's so many projects that like I never would have thought of to try, but I enjoyed most of them. And so I think just like remembering to grow as an artist, and like even the artist that I studied, Anthony Gormley, um, he's like ridiculously overeducated, and he went back to school like 5 different times at different universities. And I think studying him throughout the semester has just reminded me how important it is to continue your education. And so I think I'm definitely going to apply that to my future and continue to try and learn from other artists, even when I'm not in school and trying to make a living off of what I'm doing. And on top of that, supporting other artists, because um, it meant a lot to me when people would, discuss my work with me. And so I want to be able to give that back to other people as well. So I think That's those basics of 3D art and how I can apply them to my 2D art is really what I'll apply on top of just being a good member of the artistic community and trying to continue my education as I move forward.
All right, excellent. Very good. All right, who'd like to go next?
I can go next.
All right.
This is Cassie. All right, so with me, basically art's my baby. I do like photography. I do Photoshop, illustration, and I've branched out in so many different fields with Adobe programs that I'm just amazed in how far technology has grown. It's also helped me have a more found respect for artists from even just woodwork to paintbrushes to clay, how much hard work and dedication they put into it. So I'm going into the field of art and design. I don't know what they'll have down here where I live, but I'm looking forward to that. One of the things that I love, but I'm glad that I took this class, is it helped me have, like I said, a newfound respect for all these artists and for the fact that I think it was Mark Lang. He's the artist that did the cardboard. He was one of them that I did the research on, and he basically lived off on commission. And I know I couldn't do that as a single parent. I couldn't just drop my jobs and hope and pray that someone will buy my pieces. But the detailed work that he performed and how he was so organized, it gave me a new perspective on how I need to be more organized when I do my artwork. I don't really lay out my pieces. I kind of just grab piece by piece and see what works and what doesn't. I just kind of am random. But he kind of helped me understand the importance of if you put your things in order and starting from the basics, from sketching and then laying your pieces, because he cut it out each little section of cardboard and laid them out like a puzzle piece. And it was just a good experience also to be in this class because we all are going through different majors in the art field, but also it was nice to be able to communicate because it is hard being online. I would have enjoyed being in the classroom as well. But yeah, thank you.
All right, excellent. Good to hear. I'm really enjoying your perspectives on these things. All right, let's see. We have either Michael or Nicole. Which of you would like to go?
I can go.
Okay. Remind us of what you do and
so yeah,
how you
what
apply.
so yeah, I was saying I do a lot of illustrations and digital painting, and I'm studying graphic design. I think for me, the biggest that I learned from this class was give me a sense of depth, because I think in a lot of 2D artwork, it's really, I think that's what divides, the amateurs from the great, because it's hard to give something that's 2D some depth, and if you don't give it that depth, it's kind of really uninteresting to look at, and it doesn't look as, your eyes can tell there's something off, and something, it just makes it seem like it's not as good as it could be or believable. And so like making all these things in 3D space, especially with the wires and stuff, really gave me a little bit more sense of depth and how things work on the 3D world. And what's great about that is that you can translate that over to or transfer that over to 2D artwork, because I think the more sense of depth that you have, the better you can make any type of 2D artwork. And yeah, I think that's where what I'm going to use it moving forward most is for that, because that's the biggest thing that I noticed while doing all these things, was that my skills in 2D artwork improved by knowing, how 3D art works. And so I think that was it for me.
All right, that's excellent. Very good observations. All right, how about you, Nicole?
Yes. So for me, I learned a lot about
I'm
the
sorry.
artistic critique.
Could you just remind us what you normally do, and then
Yes. So I do Canva. I work with Canva a lot, and then also I do photography.
okay.
Okay. So I think what I learned from the class is the artistic critique, and basically like learning more about how to look at an art piece in a way, like describing it and like understanding more and having more of an appreciation for art, because before I wouldn't really look at it at the way that other people do. If I went to a museum, I just would say, "Oh, that's really nice," and I learned in this class that we need to look further into it. Like there is a meaning behind it, and that by critiquing it we can learn more about the artist, and I think that's something that I'm going to take from this class.
All right, excellent. Very good. Okay, those are the three big questions that I wanted to ask everybody, and I would like your input. I want to have a little bit of a discussion. One of the things that I had wanted to talk about specifically was using the tools of artistic critique to help in observing and appreciating things moving forward. And what's really nice is I don't have to talk about that because you guys already did. And I'm really grateful that a few of you have talked about that, as this is the big thing that you're going to be using in the future. I wanted to share just one of the artists that I despised and then grew to really enjoy by applying those tools of artistic critique. And I'd like to hear just from a couple of people, if you had similar experiences, just revisiting artists or things that you hated, but revisiting them this more recently with an understanding of those tools of artistic critique. One artist that I used to really not care for at all was Marcel Duchamp. I thought he was just a massive waste of skin. And one of the reasons is that he was basically taking regular stuff and claiming it was art. Now, if we look at description, we can describe it. It's an ordinary object. If we analyze it, the artist hasn't really done anything to it. But when we start interpreting it, the big thing that Marcel Duchamp did was change people's awareness of what this thing was by forcing them to address their assumptions and their preconceived notions and playing with those. This was at a time, the early part of the last century, about 100 years ago, when he was doing this. People were very confident that they knew what the artifact they called art was. It was something that somebody made that could be bought and sold. It was a commodity. And the gallery system that he was confronting was run essentially by people that directed an understanding and expectation of what art was. And he thought that from the things that he said, the things that he responded to, he thought that was incredibly limiting. Because he wanted people to be aware that art was not just an artifact, but it was also kind of a sign or a symbol of how you dealt with the world, how you perceived things. And now we look at that and we accept it without even articulating it, because we can accept something like Broadway as being art, when 100 years ago people dismissed it completely as some of these things as being vaudeville, or just lowbrow entertainment for the masses. And in one sense, if we looked at Mark Langen's work in a dumpster, in a recycle bin, we would dismiss it completely as garbage. But when it's a 3D logo for that was commissioned for the head corporate offices of wood farming company, then a lumber company, it becomes something completely different. About I want to say 500, 600 years ago, there was a guy whose name was Ibn Khaldun. He was a Muslim philosopher who started writing things about how meaning, a lot of meaning, is developed because of our expectations and relationship with whatever it is that we're examining. And he became kind of the father of our modern ideas of museology and display, and even a big part of marketing. You see a bottle of detergent, for example, on the shelf in a store, and it means something completely different than the advertising that's for it. The advertising starts putting in things like happy families, successfully run home, a manicured presence, a curated living space, and the expectations are raised that with this bottle of detergent in our lives, somehow all those other things will be associated with that. And that kind of awareness of psychology was really articulated by that guy 600 years ago, when he's talking about how meaning changes because of our expectations, how we approach it, the setting, the context, all of that. And the reason why I tie that all together is that Marcel Duchamp was very much aware of how meaning changes, and how we with the way we address things, with the context that it's in. He was able to turn a bicycle wheel into something that now is a priceless work of art, because he was able to play with people's expectations. And not only that, but he was able to do it successfully at a time when it really made a huge impact in history. And without those tools of artistic critique, I would never have bothered even exploring that possibility, let alone getting to a point where I appreciated it. Have any of you had something, like a parallel type experience with using the keys and skills you picked up in this class, where something you dismissed completely was now something that you really appreciate? I think, yeah, anybody, please talk about that.
Something that I did a couple weeks ago was I went to the BYU Museum of Art, the MoMA or whatever, MOA, whatever, and they didn't have like sculptures. Like I wasn't looking at sculptures, but they had a lot of printed artwork that was like made from like food. I don't remember who the artist was, but like there was like the Mona Lisa in jelly and peanut butter. I think it's still on, so if you guys are interested in that kind of thing, you can go see it. But there was one with like caviar. It was a like I don't even know, like it's not a painting. Like I don't know what to call it because it's food. But anyway, and I think had I gone to that exhibit before this class, even though I mean I couldn't obviously touch the peanut butter or the caviar or whatever, that I would have just been like kind of dismissive, like, okay, like cool, interesting. But going like after learning like the tools of artistic critique, and then also just like like basic 3D art principles and reading the textbook I really enjoyed. made me appreciate on a whole nother level the effort that it probably took to get, you know, depth into Mona Lisa's eyes using only peanut butter. Like, I can only imagine. I don't even know how they did that, but it just like blew my mind, and I think it just grew my appreciation so much. And like I was talking about earlier with the cardboard, when I read through the Texture Tales assignment at first, I was like, great, cardboard. And then I was watching the videos of the artists that use it, and I was like, oh my goodness, like people get paid to work with cardboard as like their art form. And watching that, even though I'm pretty sure I'll never be a cardboard artist, um, I just like had so much appreciation. And every video that I watched or articles, the articles that I read, like each one of them, I was just like, wow, I was just blown away by how much detail and structure and just like beauty. And I guess it just occurred to me that in everything there is art. Like you wouldn't think that like a corrugated paper products company would need a sign, but the fact that it's made out of cardboard makes it 100% more interesting because that's what they do. And I guess it kind of just reaffirmed to me that there's literally art in everything. Um, and if you understand what the artist is trying to do, then you'll understand why it's considered art to them. So kind of like what you were just talking about, but there's art in everything, and living in a 3D world, we're surrounded by 3D art. So I just thought that was really cool.
Wait, very cool. I really appreciate that perspective. Anybody else?
Well, mine, we going back to one of the artists that we had to look into. It was Judith Scott. So when I first started seeing the pictures and work that she did, I'll be honest, I looked at it and I'm like, that was just like garbage, just in a trash bag. I wasn't too impressed at first, but after I had the opportunity to dig in and more read about this artist and figure out more about who they are and what they are, my sense of my personality, my interests, and everything changed. One, because I used to work with a Down syndrome child. And so I know they're very bright children, and they're very talented when it comes to the art community, as well as I work with deaf people. And so putting those two together and having this lady just start creating stuff, recycled material, and even making it out of a chair, it gave me more compassion and understanding that I need to not judge a book by its cover kind of thing. Um, and it helped me understand that I need to read the fine print before I make any judgment calls.
I think that's a really valuable perspective too. Both of you have really hit something on the head. When we approach something with the idea that maybe there's something that we can find a respect about this, I think it expands so many opportunities for appreciation. There are several artists that are working today. The one that you mentioned is just one of them, where even 50 years ago, which is just a drop in the bucket in the scheme of time, they would never have nobody would have cared to allow them a voice. And I think I think that there's a really big lesson there. When somebody has the opportunity to express themselves and is allowed the permission to express themselves. Sometimes that permission is just self-permission too, but marvelous things can happen. And then when Ali was saying, having an appreciation for the kind of work and thought that goes into it is just can exponentially expand our experience for something. I think the artist's name is Hosokai. I'm not exactly sure, but 1700s, 1800s, woodblock printing was something that people did in Japan and would make just hundreds, sometimes thousands of these prints that were so common that when items were shipped to be sold in Europe, for example, this paper would be used as packing paper. Basically like, shredded paper that we use today for packing paper. People just thought they were basically recycling. When that came here, most people just saw that and threw it away. And you got people like Van Gogh and William Morris that were entranced with something that everybody else thought was garbage. They would take these Japanese woodblock prints and explore them and examine them, essentially using those tools of artistic critique. And Van Gogh, that informed his color choice and the way he set up his paintings. He was essentially, well, for a big part, he was self-taught. He taught himself how to sketch, and he allowed those woodblock prints that were basically thrown away by his peers to inform his color use. I'm thinking specifically of several of his floral arrangement paintings and his landscape paintings. The way he set up where the elements were on the canvas were directly informed by those Japanese woodblock paintings. A friend of mine has written a book exploring that, which is really fascinating. And then William Morris, he was looking for new ways to explore things like fabric, textile prints, and wallpaper. And he was just flabbergasted by just the design sense of essentially 19th century packing peanuts. You know, these Japanese woodblock prints were so common, it was essentially garbage. And William Morris is a guy that pretty much informed a big part of, decades later, what became Art Deco and the American Prairie style movement. You know, so these are things that are really prevalent, and it's fascinating to me that without applying those tools of observation, those artists would never have really been inspired to that extent, and I think the world would look much different than it does today. So I'm glad that you guys really pick up on those kinds of things, and that's really exciting to hear. Does anybody have a dramatic experience about an artist whose work really made them want to vomit, but after exploring this class, now they really... I know that Allie has talked about her really awful associations with cardboard and how that dramatically changed. Anybody else think of one artist in particular that their perspective was completely transformed by using those tools? Anybody think of one? One that I know that you guys know that I really like is Henry Moore. When I first saw his stuff, it literally made me want to nauseated. And when I started really looking at his stuff, it was complete change. You know, now his stuff just I really enjoy, like his reclining figures and other work that he does. And I think one of the reasons why I was so nauseated at the beginning is I thought he was trying to make a picture perfect 3D image of the human form, and that wasn't at all what he was doing. And I remember thinking, boy, this guy really sucks. Why does he get paid so much? And you know, that's not what he was doing. I think applying those tools, like what Allie said, it completely changed my perspective. And what Cassie talked about, it, seeing what people can do when they're encouraged to use their voice. I think Judith Scott's work, just the fact that her sister found her, I think is a beautiful story in itself. But the fact that people knew she was kind of, you know, stealing stuff from people and stuff, and just everybody knew it was an open secret. They just allowed her to do it because it was finally something that she felt or everybody thought that she felt she could actually do and have control over. So everybody kind of gave her permission to do that. And now I think with the x-rays of her work and everything, there's all these layers of meaning that on one level I think is really heartbreaking because she's trying so desperately to communicate. But on the other hand, on the other level, I think it's so liberating because she succeeded. You know, and it's a beautiful story that I think without being able to look at her work with an artist's eye and with compassion, I don't think people would appreciate it or enjoy it at all. And I think that that's a phenomenal. I don't know what other word to use, but it's a beautiful success story. And the only thing that makes me really sad is I wish there was something, had been something in the world that would have allowed her sister to find her and be, for the two to be reunited earlier. And I think that would have been phenomenal to see what other things she could have created. There was one other thing that I wanted to talk about really briefly. Have you guys ever had that experience where you create something, and I'm pretty sure that Cassie has, just because of the description of what she does. Have you ever done this thing where you create something and then you feel something is missing and it frustrates you because it's imbalanced and you don't feel that it's done, and so you just leave it? Has anybody had that experience?
I definitely have. I think there's like at least a dozen of paintings that I've done in the past like couple months that are just sitting there just because like I like it, but there's just something missing and I just don't know what, so I just give it some time and eventually get it finished, but it's just frustrating.
Well, and I think one of the things that I learned the hard way was that these kind of classes, I thank you, Michael, for sharing that. These kinds of classes that have you already taken your 2D design class, Michael?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I'm hoping that you are discovering this as well, but when I took the foundations design classes years ago, one of the things that I learned from those classes was I walked away with a set of tools that I could use. Things like we talked about the golden section. We talked about the principles of design. And I think we're all unanimous in knowing that the golden section does not define whether or not something is art. And the principles of design are not things that everybody is required to use all the time if you want to give yourself the label of artist. Is that something we can all agree on?
Yeah.
Yeah. But those are, yeah, absolutely. As a glass worker, the tools that I have are, there's grozing pliers, there's lead nippers, there's the glass cutter, there's grinders, there's all these sorts of things that I can have access to. But a complete window is going to be a complete window whether or not I use every tool at my disposal in the prescribed manner that the instructions describe when I bought the tool in the first place. From that same perspective, those tools, those unifying principles of design and the golden section are there for you to be aware of as an artist. So if something feels incomplete, instead of being discouraged, I want you to go I would really hope that you would go through that set of tools that you've learned from your foundation classes and see if any of them can be applied to help. When I was doing printmaking, I helped set up the letterpress program at BYU. When I was doing that, sometimes things would feel unbalanced. And then when I would go back to the basics and look at things like the golden section and the rule of thirds, focal points and balance, I could use those tools. I would never, I don't think I ever used the rule of thirds exactly the way it's written out in a textbook, but I could use that to kind of inform why this thing felt unsettling or why it felt out of balance and use it to correct things. Or On the other hand, there were many times where I didn't want a sense of balance. And I was wondering, well, why does this feel so set and stagnant? And it was because I stuck directly to, for example, the golden section. And when I was aware of that and I was able to manipulate it, then I could engage people because they would share that feeling of imbalance with me, and it would attract them to engage in the work more directly. So, that's the thing that I would like to for you to think about. You have these tools under your belt. I don't want you to use them all the time in everything you do for the rest of your life forever. But you have a different set of, or a new set of skills that you didn't have 2 months ago that you can use now to inform the work that you do moving forward. So if something doesn't feel quite finished, or it's not quite the way you want, or it's not saying exactly the same thing that you would like it to say, you have basically a toolkit that you can use to go through and one at a time explore, well, does it have enough narrative? Does it have the right set of colors? Am I balancing colors correctly, or am I imbalancing them the way I want to? You have those set of tools to use moving forward. Do you guys understand what I'm trying to explain?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yes, for sure.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, great. And the reason why I was talking about Cassie is that she has done a little bit of absolutely everything already, and I think she's pretty good at being aware of applying this already. But I'm just hoping that everybody else can be aware of that moving forward. And sometimes the thing that's so frustrating is not being able to articulate exactly why it's not working, not being able to put your finger exactly on what you need to moving forward. And I'm hoping that classes like this really help you to do that. Do you guys have any last questions for me before we wrap up?
Just thank you for everything and being able to ship my box to me in the short amount of time. Thank you.
Oh, no problem at all. I'm glad you were able to get it as quickly as you did. There were from our end, there was some issues that we had to address directly, and I'm really grateful that you're one of the people that forced us to deal with that, because now we know what to do in the future. So thank you very much. Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I will work on getting everything graded as rapidly as I can. I'm sorry that I'm having issues with the internet reception. I will try to take care of that as best I can. So if you guys do have any questions, if you do need any more time, please email me, not through Canvas, email me with the email that's in the syllabus, and I will get back to you and do whatever I can to help you so that you can be successful in this class. All right?
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. You guys have a great weekend, and we will talk to you later.
Thank
Hopefully, I
you.
will see you in the
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Sounds good.
you. Bye.